Comrades, well, I'll formally open the meeting by acknowledging that it is hosted from the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. We pay our respects to their leaders, past, present, and emerging, and we acknowledge that we are on Aboriginal land, always was, always will be. We have an apology from Ingrid. Nicole is missing, and as I've just reported, we've just heard from Michael, which is lovely to have him back with us, but we're going to have to sort out how we keep in touch. Now, the agenda today is unemployment, and we're very fortunate to have Comrade Richard from the Wollongong branch with us to lead that discussion. There'll then be a short update on what we're doing about public housing from Dennis. Then there's check on decisions, and that's party registration, where we're at with that, and the Black Lives Matter letter, which Ivan was going to update. And yeah, that's it then. So that's the agenda for today. So I will now take great pleasure in welcoming Comrade Richard, who I haven't seen physically for a long time. So it's nice to see you today. And ask you if you would start us off talking about employment, unemployment, and so forth.
Sure. Okay. Well, thanks, Hannah. And if anyone's got any questions they want to ask, just jump in and ask. So my experience with the unemployed issue goes back quite a way. As soon as I left school, I got involved in a local unemployed group in Wollongong. Then that kind of collapsed. The old CPA down there, which I'd been, my parents were members of, they set up a Wollongong Out of Workers Union, and so I helped fund that and was a member of that. And then I left Wollongong, set up Sydney Unemployed Workers Union, moved back down to Wollongong, and was involved in the Illawarra Unemployed group down there. So it's been for many years, even though I've had a big break now from unemployed movements. So, but it's got harder and harder because the demands on unemployed people's got greater. Their time that they used to have, which was kind of their one political power that they had, was time. And that's been, you know, increasingly stolen off them as they're put through more and more hoops that they have to jump through in order to get their benefits. But as you've seen, it's a tumultuous time at the moment for unemployed people. Changes are happening, well, weekly. So you've heard the latest. So the dole was 550 a fortnight. And what they did is there was a big campaign to raise the dole, raise Newstart, and started off with the Greens a few years ago, and actually they moved it in Parliament, and both the Liberal Party and Labor voted against it, and that was in 2018. So it hasn't been raised since 94. So that's how long it's been since there's been any change in the level. So you can imagine it's $40 a day is what they're on. Now, course of COVID, there was, the government knew there was going to be huge numbers of more people unemployed, and the economy wouldn't be able to cope. So, and there's kind of a re-acceptance of Keynesian economics, and the view that, the unemployed are actually the best people to give money to because they'll spend it all, they won't save any. So this idea that they'd create this supplement, which would basically double the dollar, be 550, that's December. And what they've done just this week was say, we'll keep that going for longer, but after September, we're going to halve it. So it'll be 250, it's actually less than half. It'll go from 550 to supplement to 250. So from $1,100 a fortnight to $800, and that will go 6 months longer. But the main thing, though, of course, is these are just supplements, and the understanding is that these will only stay in as long as their COVID's around. There's been no change at all to actual New Start level. It's still the same. Labor Party's changed their line. They're saying, you know, we think there should be a raise to New Start. It's much too low. Even though, as I said, 2018 wasn't that far back, and they did have a chance to raise it and actually voted against it. But anyway, they're in opposition. There's nothing they can do about it. They can't change it themselves. So they're saying they've changed their line. They do want it raised, but when asked what should it be at, they won't answer. They haven't got a figure where they want it to be. Now, what we in unemployed groups did was, there is a really good unemployed group around at the moment. It's national. Most of the time I was involved in unemployed groups, there wasn't a national body. So that's something kind of quite recent, and well, it's been around for a reasonable while, I suppose. And they have branches. I think there's 2 branches in Sydney. There's both in the western suburbs. There's inner west and outer west. We've got some party members involved in the inner west, I think. So, but I know some of the people who have been involved in that have been involved in unemployed movements for many years. And they're basically about lobbying the government, trying to get it raised, the New Start raised. They're also about defending the unemployed against attacks, because there's always attacks on unemployed people, and of course they're an easy scapegoat. And so there's talk not that long ago about drug testing the unemployed. That was one way of kicking more people off. If they have found that they're taking drugs, either you kick them off if they do it a couple of times, but even if they do it just one time, it would be an excuse to put them on the other attack, which is the cashless welfare card, which has been a horrific thing that was kind of first, widely introduced in regional areas. And, it's a shocking thing, because you're kind of limited to the shops that will accept that card. Not every shop will, you might only find in your region there's 1 or 2 shops that accept it. And so you're very limited to where you can actually shop. So it's a really horrific thing. And they keep talking about, and they have, extended it to more and more regional areas. Some people, in the government saying they want to spread it everywhere, but it actually costs them a lot of money to do it. So I think that's kind of their reluctance. But it's a level of social control that's really quite disgusting. And as you can imagine, the unemployed groups are campaigning against that quite aggressively, which is good to see. And so also, we're still getting the attitude which governments and both major parties have had, was that the unemployed are there because they don't want to work. It's an attitudinal problem. Sometimes they'll be a bit nicer and say, well, it's because they're not trained enough. They're not going to admit that it's actually because of the nature of the capitalist system. So they blame the unemployed. Mm. And so Scott Morrison, it was only last month, I did write down the quote if I can find it. Anyway, he was basically saying, unemployed Australians are not working because job seeker is too generous. So that's what's caused all this unemployment, the increase in unemployment. Nothing to do with COVID. No. It's that the job seekers is just too generous. I mean, the absurdity. I mean, you can't really believe that he believes that. I mean, everybody knows the impact of COVID-19, and the idea that, you'd come out and say something that the unemployed don't want to work, and, it's because they're getting too much money. But So there's this push against, this is their excuse not to give the unemployed too much money. And it's been the whole thing about keeping New Start down, is you encourage people to be unemployed. I heard the worst kind of thing like this in England, where one of the politicians came out saying we shouldn't give blankets to the homeless because that will encourage people to be homeless. You know, you think people are actually freezing to death, but no, if you give them a blanket, everybody's going to go leave their nice, warm, comfortable houses and go sleep on the streets. Yeah, it's just, yeah. But anyway, the unemployed cop that kind of thing all the time. So it's also about educating people about what the real causes of unemployment are. So lots of social media is important. And so you'll find both of the Sydney groups have got Facebook pages. Unemployed Workers Union, the main national body's got a really active Facebook page. But no, it's a interesting area, but they are hard to mobilise just because of the nature of unemployment. And so there are difficulties there. Yeah, are there any questions or anything people would like to ask?
I mean, what do you, as a member of the Communist Party, think should be done? You know, bugger ScoMo and his Liberals. If we were in power, what would we do?
Well, what you do is you do employ more people. You can do it through, there's so many areas people could be employed in. I mean, it's not like, I mean, you just got to look at hospitals. You've got to look at schools. There's so much work there to be done. I mean, it's not like there's no work for people to do. There's a massive amount. The understaffing levels, you know, in all basic public, infrastructure is massive. You know, the amount of understaffing. So that can be addressed, you know, straight away. And what you do, of course, is taxing. I mean, even prior to the introduction of socialism, you just taxing the wealthy can straight away allow you to employ people in hospitals, in schools, in, you know, creating better roads, childcare, all kinds of things. You know, it's so that's as I said, there's just no shortage of work for people to do. It's not like technology is actually, you know, got rid of the need of these people's work. But yeah, there's lots of things, and so that would be the first thing for me. I would say to do is, you know, the government needs to employ more people and employ them in socially useful jobs. So if I was in power, that's the first thing I'd be doing. But of course, socialism, once you're getting towards socialism, you don't have the requirement of unemployment. And also, you tend to have, what you see in the social sector anyway all the time is you have, you know, a lack of workers. You never have too many. You know, in social sector, you just never have the problem of too many workers. It's not a problem you have. So unemployment doesn't become an issue in socialist countries. You know, unless, you know, you have a sizable private sector, but in the public sector, unemployment isn't an issue. And so the more you expand the public sector, the less unemployment becomes an issue. And so that, to me, is the solution, is expansion of the public sector, employing more people in it, and that'll see the end of unemployment. So,
what's your view about a universal? Oh, sorry, Dennis, you go next.
No, when you're finished, sorry, I'm just.
That's all right. I can ask my question later. I've had one done.
I've been wrestling with the idea of contacting the unemployed, and I've sort of thought about setting up a stall outside Centrelink. There's a Centrelink office at Redfern, and there's one at Leichhardt, and there's probably another one fairly close. And I was just thinking of what would we say, you know, and but everything we say, for example, if we give them a leaflet, well, that leaflet might have the virus on it.
Oh,
And
right. Yeah, yeah.
and if we ask them to fill in a postcard, well, that postcard or that pen might have
Dennis,
a,
You're
so
breaking up a little bit.
sorry, the how's that? Is that so
Oh, that's a
and
bit.
the other thing is if we had like a march for jobs, well, then we'd come up against all the sort of troubles that the Black Lives Matters people have.
Yeah.
And if we have like, in the 30s, that they did have poverty marches, and people, we want jobs, we want houses, we want food, and um, those sort of issues. Just how to do them in this particular setting. Yes, we can do emails and Facebooks and things, but it's not as satisfying as getting out on the street. And I just sort of wrestling with some of those sorts of ideas. And I just wondered if you had come across anybody who was doing good work on these issues and doing it in such a way as they were able to scoot around any sort of virus safety issues.
Well, I think leaflets, I think in a way, you could do leaflets in a safer manner, in that you just have a pile of leaflets and you tell people to get one. So maybe you've only handled them in the plastic bag straight from the printer. You put them down where you are and you just direct people to grab one. And it's no more dangerous than when you buy something at the shop and they hand you whatever it is you're buying from behind the counter, which people are doing every day. So, but if you really wanted to get away from handing out anything, you could just have speakers outside, so talking about it, and people tend to be stuck at Centrelink for a while, and so there's a chance they'll be sitting there and listen. They will have a chance to listen. Mm-hmm. So that's worthwhile doing. There was a really good response. It must have been on the ABC. They were talking to somebody from the Black Lives Matter, about, it was breakfast news. And why are you doing it now? It's such a dangerous time, it's all these dangers. And of course he was saying, well, the spotlight's on us now. If we don't do it now, we're going to miss this chance. And look, it just isn't. People are saying, oh, protest, isn't that terrible? Well, and this is what the person was saying, well, I was at the markets yesterday and there was people were much more squashed together than I've ever seen them at a protest, in the last 3 months. But nobody goes on about these risks. Nobody goes on about the sporting events and how close people are there. He said, everybody at this event is going to be given a mask. People, as long as the police allow it, people will be, a safe distance from each other. I mean, in the demos I've been, the only time social distancing wasn't maintained was when the police actually pushed us together. And it was actually the police that forced the break in social distancing. So I think there are ways around it. I know the biggest thing we ever did, I mean, it's not easy to get the people to do it. The logistics is a bit of a pain. But the biggest thing we ever did, of course, was before WOW started, and that was the March to Sydney. And it was actually a recreation of a march that was done in the 1930s. And it was only 30 people marched. So it wasn't a huge amount. It was, 30 people marched from Wollongong, the 82 kilometres to Sydney. Took 3 days. Massive publicity. Mind you, when we got to Sydney, there was 10,000 people there to meet us from all different unions. But the amount of publicity we got just marching because of the length of it, because it was, again, a recreation of an event from the Great Depression. That's it. As I said, it's a bit of a nightmare logistically. the unions were really good, and where they were able to organise feeding everybody when we got to our, where we stopped. They'd arrange the campsites, they'd arrange the tents. So all we did was kind of get to the spot. The tents were already up. There was food ready for us to eat. So they were marvellous. The unions had done a brilliant job. Organising, we just sat in a room and said, hey, wouldn't it be a good idea to do this, have this march up to Sydney? Mentioned it at the ironworkers meeting, and next thing we know, they've organised everything and off we go. So, but I think grand things like that, as I said, they're not easy, but they get a lot of publicity. But I think outside Centrelink offices is always good, because you do have people generally there who are stuck there and have to wait a while. So especially in the morning, you've got the queues. So yeah, I think there's lots of ways to mobilise the unemployed. It's not the easiest thing to do, but yeah, it can definitely be done.
Sorry.
Just hang on a second. Ivan, you're the one who wanted us to discuss this topic. What questions have you got?
Well, how we spread this message in regarding about the unemployment issues happening in Australia? Like, how you let your voice to be heard to the people?
Yeah, I mean, it's not easy. And how it's about, see, I was quite lucky. In Wollongong, it's a regional area, and if you cough, it's in the papers and it's on the news. That's how, the news is dying for anything to talk about. Sydney, when I was involved in unemployment movements in Sydney, it was much harder. So as far as, obviously social media, we all know how to do that. As far as getting more general media, we had to do pretty dramatic stuff. And that's kind of harder now. So we occupied the Minister of Social Security's office. And first thing we did was we handed a piece of paper to every worker there saying, why we were there, that, we weren't against them, that we realised they were union members and we supported them in their struggle, blah, 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 just so that they didn't feel threatened by us being there. But, and then we used the minister's phones to ring up the media and get all the media along. We also occupied a Centrelink office, and again, rang up all the media, said we've occupied a Centrelink office. Whether or not, again, these things are harder to do now, but it's trying to come up with big things like that. Sometimes it doesn't have to be any, just something imaginative, something that's going to look good, on the news, make a good photo, make good, footage on the TV. So you've got to kind of be creative. And it is harder now because of COVID. It does really limit things. And it's something you've really got to think about, which, we never had to before. So, bringing a whole horde of people into an small office wouldn't really work now. You're not going to get much public sympathy doing that. So, but there are things you can do that can get, publicity in the paper and the media. And besides that, I think it is just a lot of first trying to get the unemployed on side so that they'll join the movement and do that, our kind of bread and butter activity was just going along to Centrelink's offices. Sometimes we'd have a big event outside. Sometimes they'd just be little. When they were big, then we'd have megaphones. We'd have, 20 people there, 30 people there, handing stuff out. So, but it's that kind of stuff. I think it's really important that if you're going to, that you be linked in with the national group. They have campaigns that are being organised nationally. And so you could really kind of get ideas from them. I'm sure these are questions that they've mulled over. So they'd be a really good resource that you'd want to get hold of for sure. So yeah, the Australian Unemployed Workers Union got a website, that Facebook page. They've got full-time people there, so they're pretty well organised. So yeah, that's some ideas.
Fair enough. What about these? You do know a lot of things. People are they're getting very divided because they have their own beliefs. They're getting rely on fees on left. It's like they go, oh, lefties, they're like authoritarians. They believe that being a leftist is like having a system like state. China is like our dictatorship. That's one of the things pretty much we deal a lot here in Australia. It's like a lot of people are actually afraid of left-wing movement, and they think it's a bad thing.
Well, you definitely get some of that. You absolutely will get some of that. But I think if you're dealing with the unemployed and you're talking about things that really are going to affect and are affecting their lives, and you know, anybody on Newstart knows how terrible it is. You're not going to find many people on Newstart who aren't going to support you if what you're doing is trying to get the rate of Newstart increased. They're not going to care that even if they're against lefties in every other circumstance, if you're trying to raise Newstart, you know, they'll be right behind you. Yeah, because they know just how desperate they are living on that. So you pick, you know, campaigns that they can really get behind, regardless of their political position. But it's true, you're more likely to get, you know, strong support from people, you know, from left wing. That's just the reality of it. But you know, you will get others who you know, who'll be interested just because of, you know, you're talking about things that are really going to make a difference to their lives. You know, and just injustices that are occurring that are blatant to everybody. You know, I think it's only Liberal Party or to the right of the Liberal Party who don't think Newstart should be raised, and even within the Liberal Party, there's people who think Newstart should be raised. So, you know, that's a campaign. I think you can get massive support about that, raising Newstart.
Yeah.
Richard, there's a lot of talk in the media about young people, and sorry, Ivan, have you finished? Sorry, have you finished asking questions, Ivan?
Yeah, I'm done. It's all good.
There's a lot of media commentary that the new unemployed are women and young people. And have you noticed those sort of ranks, or have you noticed that sort of phenomenon, or is that just media talk, or is that how would you appeal to sort of single mums? You know, how could you get them out on the street or something? You know, like it's or being active. You know, they're sort of flat out looking after their child and that type of thing. So I just wondered if you come across that.
Well, yeah, it is a big problem, and of course, single mums, they're on the pension until 16. Till their kids are 6, and then they go on Newstart. Unfortunately, it was ALP again who decided that at a certain age they were going to kick single mums off the pension and make them go and do Newstart. And it was, huge numbers of women were forced from a kind of reasonable pension amount down to the ungodly levels of Newstart under that ALP decision. But yeah, it's a real problem getting them involved with when they have children. But I think there's still plenty of unemployed people there who are either below the age of where they've got children, and there's still plenty of guys, I think, as well. But of course, the youth suffer much worse, and they are doomed because of COVID. Because hospitality is really getting, jobs in hospitality are just being destroyed, and so they're youth-centered jobs, and so you are seeing the youth ranks of the unemployed growing. So it was in Wollongong, even when I was unemployed, we had like 10% general rate of unemployment, but youth unemployment in some suburbs like Warrawong was 50%. So, the youth is always worst hit by unemployment. And I think that's still pretty much the case. So, and they're really easy to get active, more willing to be active, the youth, I guess, is generally what I've found.
Richard, I'm assuming that meetings like this on Zoom make it more possible to contact unemployed people, because most people nowadays seem to have access to Zoom and to online social media and so forth. Even if they're unemployed, there still seems to be a very high level of sort of online expertise and access. And I'm thinking that, there are two separate sort of directions. One is to reach out to unemployed and try and get them into the unemployed people's unions, try and talk to them also as communists, so we make our position clear. And I think, campaigning on New Start is a very good idea. And so I've got kind of two questions. One is, do you agree with what I've just said? Secondly, what do you think is a figure for New Start that the party should campaign for? And sort of thirdly, I think we would then have to look at seeing if we could have a good relationship with the unemployed workers' unions, one in which we're openly party people trying to support. And at that point, we then look at what can be done on the streets. And if we get a second wave in New South Wales, well, we'd obviously have to hold off that a bit. But if they manage to largely suppress, well, there's no evidence of any community transmissions from the Black Lives Matter demonstrations. So we could argue for street activity.
Yeah. No, I agree. And obviously, you're going to miss out on some unemployed people if you do it through Zoom, but I think you're right. I think there is a lot of unemployed people do have, even if they don't own a mobile phone capable of doing Zoom, they probably have access to one. So, there are young unemployed people out there who are quite limited technology-wise because of the expense. But I think there's an awful lot that do have access. So yeah, you'll be missing some, but I think it's could well be worthwhile just because of how handy it is and how useful. So I think it's probably a bit of swings and roundabouts. You'll pick up some people because it's just that much more easier, and it's for them to do it, and it's more convenient to do it through Zoom. But you'll lose some who don't have the technology. So I think it's worth doing. It's worth looking into, absolutely, and doing, Zoom meetings with the unemployed. Now, as far as the amount goes, what are we going to decide on the amount? We used to say the poverty line was the definite bare minimum. So these are the ideas, the marks that the levels you could talk about. You could talk about increasing it to the same amount as a pension, maybe. The higher you go, the less likely are you going to get it, of course. Okay, thank you, Lucy. I've just been reliably informed by my staff here, my administrative assistant, that $457 a week is the poverty line. which is pretty spot on, isn't it? Let's see what the pension is. So
Sorry,
I think
457, did you say?
yeah, a week.
That's the poverty line.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the poverty line, they're saying. So
Yeah, okay.
So that's, I think, yeah, that's pretty much I think that's pretty much the same as the pension. So I think you could say bring it up to the level of the pension or bring it up to the level of the poverty line, whichever way you want to say it. I think that's a really good mark. I mean, the position nobody should be living in poverty.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's very defendable. So that would probably be my suggestion. So I'm trying to remember, I think once back in the day we used to say 15% above the poverty line, but that's when the unemployment benefits weren't that far below the poverty line as they are now. So yeah, I think poverty line might be reasonable, in line with the pension. So again, it depends if you want to try and get pensioners involved as well, because they might want to see the pension being raised. And of course, they've got, living right on the poverty line isn't easy either. And pensioners are doing it tough.
Mm.
I'm sure I don't have to tell you about that. So it depends. But if you're aiming at New Start, I think most people on New Start would consider being level with the pension. At the moment, they're getting more than pension. So, but that's because of the supplement. The actual New Start is still where it was, as I said. So if you made New Start same as the pension and they got the supplement on top, they'd be doing much better. So, but yeah, that'd be my kind of advice about the amount to campaign for. So,
thanks for that. Ivan, Dennis, any more comments, questions?
No.
Okay, I've got one, and that is, Richard, what's the, if you like, political complexion of the unemployed workers' unions or unemployed workers' groups?
Okay, I think it changes, and I'm not too sure at the moment. So it kind of varies a bit. I know there's, we had all kinds of people involved. I'm sure you know William Keats.
Oh, yes.
Well, I hated his politics, but I loved his commitment to the unemployed. And so if he's alive, he's working on unemployment. He's campaigning for the unemployed. And yeah, I'm sure he'll die campaigning for the unemployed. So it's absolutely a campaign. But it just shows you, and we worked together quite well, even though our political views were like miles apart. We could work quite well together. But so you did get people like Bill, and Bill would normally have a couple of friends who'd be involved with him. But there was often some party people. What is it like at the moment? I'd say it's probably a whole mixture, probably like it is most of the time. Like, is anybody dominating? I'm not sure. And I'm not sure what it's like in Melbourne, which is where the Australian Unemployed Workers Union is based. The national body's based in Melbourne. And I'm not too sure about that. So I did meet some of the people that were forming it, but I'm not too sure. Didn't really find out that much about their politics. They seemed a little bit kind of ACOS-y, a little bit, I guess a bit more radical than maybe left Labor, kind of that kind of thing. But but yeah, and I think, yeah, it's, you know, definite social democrats, but it's been a while, so it could have changed quite a lot. So yeah, but I think, yeah, there's definitely would be a role there for the party to play, you know, and could have some real input. One of the main reasons the CPA got involved in unemployment in the 30s in England, I know, and we had this experience in Sydney, was that fascist groups were working amongst the unemployed. And so it was an effort to try to be the first to organise the unemployed, that it was a counter to the work of the fascists. And when we were in the Sydney Unemployed Workers Union, a group, it was the head of the KKK and the National Defence of the Aryan Peoples Movement, set up an unemployed group along with an ALP member and some others. It was a really weird, bizarre mix. And they were trying to get an unemployed group going in the western suburbs. And so historically, they have been seen as, you know, as fresh, you know, as easy pickings for the right. And so that was one of the reasons I always thought it was important that the left try and organise amongst the unemployed. It's, because obviously politically they don't have a lot of power. And I said but it's still good to organise them, and there's still lots of campaigns there, and you know they can be really motivated. So, but often they can also, the long-term unemployed can be pretty damaged, just because that's the nature of unemployment. So it can be hard to work with them. But no, it's yeah, definitely worth doing. So for sure.
Yeah, just adding on to that, I mean, acknowledging that you're not sort of intimately involved in that at the moment. Do you know if the Socialist Alliance or Solidarity are doing much in this area?
No, but I could look into that for you. So I can do that. So yeah, I've been trying to find out. There's a couple of people I know who are working in the unemployed groups. I've been trying to get hold of them in preparation for this, but they're not that easy to track down. But I'll keep ringing them. I should be able to get hold of them. You know, I can't take that much longer. But and I'll let you know. So I think maybe some members of TP might be involved. I know you haven't had fun dealings with TP, but Trotskyist platform. So
yes, we know the Trotskyist platform well.
So yeah, I think they've been involved. As I said, I kind of like, I've got kind of get on well with Prava.
Everybody gets on well with Prava. He's a sweetie, apart from his politics.
Yeah. But yes. So no, he is a really nice guy, and I think him and maybe Sam. I'm not sure if they're involved, how well they're involved themselves, but they certainly are involved with the people who are involved in unemployment. So I've got in touch with Prava on other issues. So he's been really involved in the Chan Han Choi issue, the legal case. So we've been in touch with him about that. So yeah, he's one person that I can get in touch with. I can try and get in touch with Bill, because Bill Keats will know. So I'll look around and I'll be able to find out a bit of what's happening at the moment.
Because I think we might get in touch with the district committee and ask, because I don't think it's a matter for our branch to sort of develop a campaign that involves sending some comrades into unemployed workers unions. I think it's a matter for the district committee.
Yeah.
And I'd like to sort of let them know what they're letting themselves in for. But you know Comrade Christian, the secretary?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, well, I might ask him. I mean, if the comrades agree, I'll write to him about this discussion and suggest that this is a campaign that we might look for some cadres to get involved in and branches to support. And if he agrees, he might actually have a chat with you too, because we found your information so useful, and he would too, you know, approach it that sort of way.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Is Ivan and Comrade Dennis, are you agreeable with us doing that?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I agree.
Okay. All right. Well, that's what we'll do. We'll ask if the district committee will actually initiate a campaign for $457 sort of, or a bit more, to New Start.
Yes.
You know, not as a supplement, but as New Start.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I think because there are a number of young people sort of now in Central Branch and other areas of the party, it may be a campaign that they will feel comfortable with and might take up, and it gives them something to do, because it's not always easy to find, you know, work for the younger comrades in the current appalling circumstances. You know, it can be very frustrating. Yes, comrade.
It'll be definitely worthwhile, you know, I mean, finding out what's happening, going to a few meetings and just getting the lay of the land and, you know, deciding how much commitment it's worth from the party. I think that's an exercise that would definitely be worth doing. So, but as I said, raise it with Christian. I'm happy to talk to him. So.
All right. Is there anything else on the question of unemployment that comrades wish to raise?
I'd just like to, in all our information about this, that we do push for two things. First of all, that spending on the military has to be decreased, and that money that's being spent, and as we speak, there are Australian warships in the South China Sea. You know, like every time they go off to something like that, there's $20 or $30 million.
Yeah.
There's ships on the high seas heading towards a huge military exercise off Hawaii in August, and this sort of spending, and at this time, at the best of times, it's silly, but at this time, it's absolutely ridiculous. So that this spending, the military spending versus the social need, has to be emphasised time and time again. And the connection with one of the other things that we're doing, Richard, is that when the virus struck, one of the key problems was that people didn't have money to pay the rent. And that because we haven't got a good social housing system or a public housing system, the people who will suffer the most in the housing sense are the people who are unemployed or on very low wages. And that is the other arm of what we should be, I think there are three arms. You know, I think there's the arm of wasteful government spending, and then there's the arm of housing, and then there's the arm of jobs. There are jobs around. It's just that the government's not prepared to do them. You know, there's sort of environmental jobs and so on, and you mentioned all that. So that it's really a three-pronged approach that we need to consider. And you were mentioning that the Labor Party did this and did that. This morning, or today anyway, I'm not sure what time, Jim Chalmers said that he was in favour of forcing unemployed people to go out looking for work, which I think is a pretty callous sort of statement in this period, and quite a silly statement and quite a neoliberal sort of statement.
Yeah.
So that one of the things we could do for Jim is to sort of say, hey, Jim, you know, you're up yourself and you're, well, anyway, so that were the
Yeah.
a whole lot of random thoughts that may or may not make much sense. But anyway, I'll leave it at that.
No, well, I totally agree about the three-pronged approach. I think speaking about where the money's going to come from to raise New Start, I think that's brilliant. And obviously, defence spending is the most obvious area that people will agree on. You know, it is wasteful. There is no point in it, and so I think it does look better if you've got, you know, you can say that, well, the money's there. It's not like, you know, the money isn't there. You're just spending it on people in Australia are living in, you know, abject poverty while you're sending ships around playing, you know, war games, you know, stupid, you know, pointless war games. And, you know, you've got to get your priorities right. And your priorities should be for the people of Australia who are suffering or whatever. But, you know, that, you know, should be, you know, those are the people who you're responsible for and you should be looking after. So, yeah, and absolutely housing is linked into the whole thing as well. So the public housing and, you know, the amount that's being eroded. And so, no, I think the three-pronged approach is brilliant. Yeah, no, it's really good. Couldn't agree more.
Although, you know, I think we all need to be careful how we craft it because we don't want to make it too complicated.
Yeah.
You know, we start from, okay, we want New Start to sort of go up to so much a fortnight, which is about a bit above the poverty line. And then we add defence spending, and then we add housing, and, you know, it can get a bit complicated for people. So we would need to make it a set of very simple demands, I think, in the way we encourage the district committee to take it up.
Yeah.
But we could write that. I'm sure we could. Yeah.
Well, you might have heard we used to do 10 embassies outside various parliament houses. The worst one we ever did, the most horrible one, was outside Sydney. That was the worst, but we used to go to Canberra and sit in tents in August every year. And we'd always have a log of demands that we would go and give to the different ministers of the time that were responsible for those areas. And try and get a response. And we'd get lots of publicity for that. So, yeah, but no, a list of demands that you're interested in, absolutely.
The other thing I do think the branch could do, this bloke Jim, I didn't read that story, but I did hear talk that the government is going to ask for people to apply for 4 jobs a month again. You know, that is it joint responsibility, or you know, that system they had before.
Mutual obligation. Yeah.
Huh?
Mutual obligation.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, that seems to me something that we could say in letters to MPs and so forth, that this is utter bloody nonsense. People are losing their jobs every day. You really want to put people through applying for 4 jobs every month when there's no chance that the vast majority of the 1 million or so who are unemployed at the moment will find a job? I mean, it's you know, the mental health of unemployed workers when you force them to do that. You know, you force them into dishonesty or despair.
Yeah,
and I think it's outrageous. So, you know, maybe in the branch we could develop a letter, and, you know, all of us could sort of take it and send it around to some other people to say, would you sort of send this and abuse these idiots? Send it to this Jim bloke if you can find that. Yeah, if you
Shadow
can.
Treasurer.
Oh, is that what the idiot is? If you could find his quote, Dennis, and you know, we can craft a letter and share it amongst the branch members and ask them to send it out.
Yep. I remember now. He said he wants to do the same, but he wants to do it gently.
Yeah.
So
I don't know what that means.
No.
it's the difference between being run over by a Rolls Royce and a Datsun.
Datsun, yes.
You still up, still end up being
Maybe in the past with the mutual obligation, you know, you had to do more than 4 a month. Maybe that's him being gentle, but I mean, the psychological impact of that. I mean, I've had a period of, you know, I had a file that thick of bloody job applications, week after week after week, and you begin to think you're worthless. Of course you do. How could you not? You know, they're so worried about, you know, people who are stuck at home and their mental health, and, you know, it's a big deal at the moment. And yet they create a situation in which they're likely to cause more people to start thinking negative thoughts and contemplating suicide and so forth. And youth suicide is high enough anyway. You know, so that one's, I think, a case for a bit of fairly sharp letter writing.
Well, that's not the only big issue about unemployed. It's going to be other things as well, like stealing, like it's happening in Chile at the moment.
Yeah.
Chile doesn't have unemployment benefits, so what they do now, people are actually stealing on streets and houses because the government doesn't give them any support.
Yeah.
That's what also happens when
Ivan, how do they survive, young people in Chile, if they don't get unemployment benefit?
With a gun.
With a gun.
They're stealing.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I wouldn't call it stealing in that situation. I'd call it appropriation, except that, of course, it's very often within the impoverished communities. You know, they steal from each other, unfortunately, rather than from the rich, who are very well protected and have bigger guns. Sorry, Richard, did I interrupt you then?
No. I was just going to same thing as you. I mean, you could call it wealth redistribution, but it is true that in those in countries where there's such high crime, because of no unemployment benefits, the rich do protect themselves very well. And so, yeah, it's the poor basically steal from the poor, isn't it? It's, you know, it's tragic, but they're just the easiest people to take stuff off. They mightn't have anything of much value, but they're easy to get, you know, to get it, and they're close. So, yeah.
All right. Well, look, we have spent over an hour in a very interesting discussion. Richard, I'm really grateful to you. I found that really interesting, and out of it has come some ideas we'll send to the district committee, which is good. And when we've sort of written that, I'll make sure you get a copy of it anyway, so you know what we're up to and what we've done. Thank you very much. We've got a small amount of branch business. If you want to stay for it, you're most welcome. If you want to pull out and go and have your dinner or something, of course, we'll understand that. But really, very, very much thank you.
Well, thanks for inviting me. And remember, I'm only a phone call or a text message or whatever away, or Facebook. So if there's any more help I can give the branch, or feel free.
Thanks, Richard.
It was a delight, and thanks.
Yeah. Tell me, what is your main campaign area at the moment?
Well, it's Black Lives Matter, because that's the biggest campaign down here at the moment. So yeah, it's being involved in that. So yes.
All right. Well, we might even sort of ask you to come and talk about, you know, Black Lives Matter in Wollongong. It might be very interesting for the branch. Yeah. All right, my dear. Well, thank you very much. Do you want to stay with us, or you want to?
I'll head off. Yeah. But thank you for the offer anyway.
Okay. Thank you again.
Yeah. See you, comrade. Thanks for that.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, comrades, we'll now go to some other branch business. Dennis, you have to update us on where we're at in housing.
Yes, I some weeks ago I went on a delegation to the CFMEU, and I've reminded them a couple of times, and they haven't written back yet. But 2 or 3 days ago, one of the sites came up before council. One of there's some housing sites there, and they're going to privatise them, even though it's the worst thing you could possibly do in this period. That's exactly what they're going to do, and so we had the opportunity to speak to the council. The council were considerate, but sort of and were understanding, and they listened, but they had their own view, and they let the project through. So we've still got a bit of work to do on that, but so it was a bit of a wasn't a lose-lose. It was sort of a half a win, but we still got a long way to go on the site in Glebe, which they're going to privatise. So that's an update on that.
Okay, thanks for that. When, as I understand it, you're going to write to council again?
Yeah.
All right, well, when that letter's finalised, perhaps we can send it to all the branch members for information, so they know where we're at. So Dee Dee to send the letter. Okay, now next on the agenda, Ivan, how are you going with working on that Black Lives Matter letter?
I actually got the letter, the one Dennis sent me, and I sent him back. Actually, I added a little pamphlet, like a little picture, to make it more attractive.
Okay, Dennis, did you get that back?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't notice that. I'll have to go looking for it. Apologies about that.
All right,
Yeah.
so find that. And
I was going to ask one more question.
yeah?
Do you guys, does the CPA or joint get some? Does it actually get some like a donations, or can I do like a donation contribution?
Well, the way the CPA gets its money is, first of all, every party member has to pay dues. Now,
Okay.
at the
No,
moment,
pledge. They have to. Sorry.
they have to pay dues. Now, I think for us, because we're all pensioners or unemployed, it's $25 a year.
Because I used to pay. I used to pay. What's it called? The human right. I was a regular payer. Into this year was my last contract. So.
Yeah, just listen to me.
Mm-hmm.
We are required by the Constitution to pay what are called dues, and we pay $25 a year if we are members.
Okay.
Now, we haven't been too strict about that at the moment because we're just reorganizing the branch. Now, in addition to dues, which we must pay, and there will be a time in the year when we will start saying, okay, everybody, we must pay our dues. In addition to that, there's something we call pledges. And comrades are asked to make a pledge. Maybe $5 a week, maybe sort of, what I can donate when I've got a bit of money, although regular pledges are better. And Dennis and I had thought that once we get a bit more regular attendance by Nicole and we get Michael back and so on, then we can start talking about getting pledges from comrades. But Dennis, I assume you're going to work as branch treasurer?
Yeah.
You always did in the past. So maybe you might think about sort of when we start that a bit later on, when the worst of the virus is over and, you know, we're getting a bit more regular attendance.
Okay.
We'll do that. The other thing is, in the past, Ivan, that branches have often organised fundraising events. And the Port Jackson branch in the past used to hold soup nights. And the comrades in the branch and some of our friends would make big pots of soup, and we'd find a speaker who would be interesting, and maybe one of our friends who's a singer, and we'd have a speech and we'd have some songs, and people would eat as much soup and bread as they could, and they'd pay some money at the door for that. Now, we can't do that at the moment because of the virus, but we can start, once the virus is mostly over, we can start doing that again.
Okay.
So that's the situation. But at some stage, we all must pay $25 each, our dues as members. Yeah, the other thing we have to do is to talk to Ingrid and Nicole about if they want to do the 3 discussion classes to become a member. Do you remember we had in the party office in Surrey Hills, we had those 3 talks?
Yeah.
And every person who wants to become a member has to have those 3 talks. So at some time we need to find out if Nicole and Ingrid would like to do that, if they're ready to become members. And that would be better if they are, because then, you know, we really become a branch of 5, and that's much more viable. And then we can sort of start talking about dues and pledges.
Okay.
Okay, anything else? Oh, yes, party registration. All right, how are we doing? I have registered myself, but I haven't yet found anybody else to register as well.
No, I did my registration.
Okay, and Dennis?
I've done mine, yeah.
All right, I mean, at one level then we're good as a branch. We've all become members of the Communists, but we have to try and find some other people as well, because the party reports that we don't have quite enough people yet.
Yeah.
So if you and Ingrid have 1 or 2 friends who maybe, you know, came from Chile and are progressive and would do it, you might ask them.
Yeah, I'll ask Mum if she knows someone who's interested. She probably knows 4 people from the work.
They're not joining the Communist Party. They're joining an election organization called the Communists. They don't have to pay any money. They don't have to attend meetings. And they are not members of the Communist Party of Australia. They're members of the Communists, which is an organization for elections only.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Correct, is there anything? Oh, yes, I know there was one other question. Sorry, you wanted to say something, Dennis?
Yeah, I just wanted to show you all something I saw today. So I'll take your screen off you for a second, everyone. So bear with me. And this is the these are up on telegraph poles for about four on both sides of the road near a company called Lifeblood. I think they're something to do with collecting blood, and the union concerned is the HSU, and I think it's part of what Nicole said was happening. You know, the freeze. These are people who work in the hospital, not on the front line with the patients, but they're the storemen and the people who dish out the drugs and so on. That's what the HSU do in the hospital, and it looks like they have to vote on whether they'll accept that wage freeze. So this is a good sign of resistance to what the Treasurer said, and following up on Nicole's PowerPoint. Well, I did send something to Periche. I think that's how you pronounce his name. So anyway, I just thought you might be interested to see that. So there is a bit of resistance here and there.
Yeah, that's good. And I thought, yeah, go on, Ivan.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, that's really good.
Now, next branch meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody have a topic they want us to discuss?
Topic now. I'd rather stick to the same topic we had just today and the week before, which is the big issue. We got the public housing and the lack of investment on social.
Okay.
Social
all right.
needs, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, maybe we'll think about who might introduce that for our discussion. I'll give that a thought. Next Tuesday, in our Port Jackson talks, there's an important talk. It's about where do profits come from, and about surplus value, and Comrade Anna is going to open that discussion. So it's a very important discussion. It's something comrades have to learn about, what we mean by surplus value and how profits are created. So hopefully your mum can come too, and I'll remind everybody. I'll send out an email. But it's also an occasion when we could invite some other people as well. I think it could be an interesting discussion. Okay, is there anything else, comrades?
No, that's about it.
That's it.
Okay, well, send our love to Ingrid. We missed her.
I'll talk to her.
We'll see you all hopefully next Tuesday.
Okay.
Okay, comrades, stay healthy, stay safe.
Same
And
all right.
look after yourselves. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.